Hello again, and welcome to the Soccer Media Podcast, our weekly look at the soccer media business and the business of soccer. We are presented by Soccer America and produced by the John Shrader Media Group. I'm John Shrader. With us this time around is Stephen Goff, who for decades covered soccer for the Washington Post and now does so for Yahoo Sports. He's covered the men's national team for a long time, and he'll do so leading up to the World Cup next year.
You know, all these things are falling into place. When you step back, you have to ask yourself, okay, things are better. He has the players' attention. They got a system in place. But are they good enough? You know, are they good enough? Are the players good enough to make a run at a World Cup and get beyond the round 16? You know, we'll see. That's the big question. And that's where the pressure is on Pochettino to guide this team to that next step.
Stephen Goff will join us for an extended conversation coming up in minutes. Did you know your Soccer America membership includes a daily soccer television schedule delivered to your inbox every morning? I've been depending on it for years to keep track of the games that are being played here in the U.S. and around the world. For a free 30-day trial of Soccer America that includes all e-letters, go to www.socceramerica.com. That's www.socceramerica.com/free trial. The executive editor of Soccer America is Mike Waitala. He has this week's trivia question.
Thanks, John. Today's Soccer America trivia question. If you want to place a bet on who's going to win the next Men's World Cup, a safe bet is to bet on a team that's won it before. There have been 22 World Cups, but only 8 champions. The question, name the last team that was a first-time winner and at what World Cup that happened. Stay tuned for the answer later in the show.
As promised, the executive editor of Soccer America, Mike Waitala, is with us, as he is every time we do this adventure. Mike, how's it going?
It's going well, John. Good to see you.
Well, I guess you're here and there and everywhere, covering some playoffs, getting ready for some national team action. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. Looking forward to the U.S. national team playing. It's November friendlies, and the big news was that Gio Reyna is back in camp.
Gio Reyna. Now, he's not very old still, but he's a guy who has been in and then out for a long time. How did he get back in?
Gio's only 22, but it seems like his career has already been a saga. You know, a terrific young player who had all kinds of talent. You know, he debuted in the Bundesliga even younger than Christian Pulisic. And then, of course, there was the famous, infamous situation at the World Cup where his parents got involved in this playing time situation. But, you know, he bounced back from that with a national team. He was MVP when the U.S. won the CONCACAF Nations League. In fact, he's got 3 of those trophies with the U.S. You know, you look back at that and you see how much that he can actually contribute to the U.S. The big issue was that, you know, he's never really had a long stint of playing time since that 2022 World Cup. And, you know, he moved from Borussia Dortmund to Borussia Mönchengladbach. And even when he's been healthy there, he's only gotten into the game late, very late in the game. But Mauricio Pochettino felt it was worthwhile to bring him back.
So what do they expect him to bring? What do you think the coach is expecting from Reyna for these couple of games in the U.S.?
Well, what Pochettino basically said is that he wanted to get to know him better. It's obviously an issue that he's not getting a lot of playing time with his club, but you know, you can't forget that he brings a creativity, an innovation, a passing range that, you know, when he's on top of his game, I don't know if the U.S. has another player like that. So it's worth giving him a chance. And I think what's going to happen, you know, the other issue is that Pochettino is missing a lot of key attacking players for this window. Mostly guys like Pulisic, who are, you know, they're back on the field with their clubs, but their fitness situation is so tenuous that it's a smart thing to think long term and not have them travel back and forth, you know, and play an extra couple games. So, you know, this is a really important, serious chance for Gio Reyna to prove himself, whether, you know, on the field and off the field, that he satisfies Pochettino's expectations with his attitude. So, you know, I think that's probably the main thing to look forward to in these friendly games.
You know the Reynas, as far as you know, they've sort of kissed and made up with the national team. Different coach, of course, but are all things good? And in that situation? Do you know?
Well, interestingly enough, if you look back after the World Cup scandal, Gio was playing for Berhalter again. He's got most of his playing time under Berhalter before and after the scandal. So, that had been ironed out. Obviously, whatever dynamics come with that were something that we don't know exactly, but, it couldn't have been a great situation. So, it's a clean slate now with Pochettino. And again, I don't know what the situation is with his teammates and everything, but this is the perfect time for Pochettino to take a look at him and see how his fitness situation is, his attitude, and if he can really bring something to the team. I do think that if he doesn't pull it off at this camp, then I think it's over. Then I don't think he's going to get another shot.
Wow. And with Pulisic, it's more about just managing his time than it is the serious injury, because he got back on the field, didn't he?
He got back on the field. If you look at his history, I mean, he's one of the examples of a player. He went 2 seasons at AC Milan, playing some 50 games a year at the top level. Very, had great seasons. And right now, the focus is on keeping him fit, making sure he comes into the World Cup in that shape. And these extra trips, they're pretty rigorous, flying across the Atlantic in a friendly game. And he knows Pochettino knows exact. We all know what Pulisic can do. So he doesn't need him there. Similar situation with McKinney, who's got a new coach in Juventus, Tillman coming back from an injury. Pochettino is playing it smart, I think, even if that means the results might not be that great, but does give other players a chance to step up and evaluate the pool. And, Gio being a good example of that.
Now it's a Saturday, Tuesday rotation, Paraguay in suburban Philadelphia at the Union Stadium, and then Uruguay in Tampa. You expect to see some of that action. Would we think that maybe those two South American clubs would bring some good players?
Oh yeah, I mean they're looking ahead to the World Cup, of course. And even if if they're testing players, then those players are players they think are possibly good enough to play in the World Cup. Those will be tough games. These kind of friendlies are a little different than your regular friendlies because every single player is thinking about their dream to be in the World Cup.
Yeah. So speaking of World Cup, a guy who's seen a bunch of them, maybe not as many as JP Della Camera, but a bunch of them, Stephen Goff joins us in just a few minutes. And like a lot of folks in this business, you've known Stephen for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, Stephen's a friend of mine. I was very pleased to meet him early on in the '90s when he, was with the Washington Post, and that was a big change in American soccer media coverage. Stephen Goff ended up being the longest-serving full-time soccer writer at a U.S. newspaper. The Washington Post back then they were forward-thinking. They knew that the trend was changing, that soccer was becoming very popular, and the days of the cigar-chomping, boxing, baseball-loving editor who made fun of soccer for being a foreign game. Those years had passed. It was time to move on. So you had a first-class journalist like Stephen Goff covering the sport at so many levels, the national team, when MLS came around, men's and women's, and big contribution to soccer media in general and to the soccer community. I'm very much looking forward to listening to Stephen's interview.
And just a bit of a tease, it might say more about the state of American journalism that Stephen Goff left the Washington Post than it does about the state of American soccer journalism. So there you go. We talk about that. So thanks, Mike.
It's my pleasure.
See you next time. As promised, now with Yahoo, at least through the end of the next World Cup, which is in this neck of the woods, Stephen Goff. For about 4 decades, Stephen Goff was in the newspaper business. He's still in the journalism business, but not in the newspaper business any longer. I guess I can fairly say that, but he certainly is still in the soccer business, and he's going to spend some time with us now. Stephen, thank you for your time.
Great to join you, John.
All right. Do we have a moment here? Do we, put the black armbands on here for American newspapering? Is that what's happening now? Are we worried about that since you're no longer in the newspaper business?
We should be worried, for sure. I think there are a lot of headwinds in journalism and certainly for traditional newspapers. It's a tough time right now, and a lot of huge challenges for those still at newspapers. I've left one recently, and I still root for all my colleagues and everyone who's still fighting the good fight. But it's a tough time right now.
About 40 years at the Washington Post. And I asked this carefully, really carefully, is how difficult was it to leave? And you just did that in the last, I guess, what, 6 months, early part of 25, you left? Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
end of July.
Okay. Middle of 25.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I accepted a buyout. There were across the board buyout offers through the newsroom, and for me, the timing was right. It was a complicated formula. Wasn't like Scrooge McDuck with a big wheelbarrow full of cash dumped on people's desks. It wasn't like that at all. It's much more complicated, and so, but the timing was right given my experience and my age and what other opportunities were out there, and a lot of other factors. So no hard feelings, but for me personally, it made a lot of sense to accept and move on. But not a I wouldn't say it wasn't an easy decision, but it wasn't it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be either. Things just fell into place, and it made sense.
Now, the Washington Post is a place that had committed a lot of resources to covering soccer. I mean, you've been
Yeah,
to how many World Cups? I don't know, a bunch, and you've
yeah.
covered the not just DC United, but American soccer in its biggest picture. I mean, they did make an incredible investment. Did they decide no longer to make that investment, or maybe there's two questions there? They have
Yeah.
a history of that investment, and do they
Mhm.
no longer want to do that?
Yeah, it's a great history. I mean, we were at the forefront really, among
Mhm.
traditional media, going to World Cup qualifiers all over the CONCACAF region. They would send me, overseas on occasion to work on stories. Obviously, the World Cups. For me, there was 8 men's World Cups and 6 women's World Cups.
Oh, you're almost in
Um,
JP Dellacamera range there, yeah.
yeah. I went back to 1994, and yeah, just traveling with DC United to many or most of their away games. So yeah, there was great commitment. There was even a point, um, you know, 20, 25 years ago where we would do the post print edition would have a full page of soccer. Um, like I think it was every Friday, and on the opposite page in the print edition, it was the same thing, but it was in Spanish because there was a
Great.
outreach to the Spanish speaking audience, which obviously has a very deep passion for the sport. So yeah, there was a lot. I was never the only person at a World Cup. The Post would send other people, and it was an amazing commitment going back to the early 1990s, and certainly for the 1990 World Cup, 94 World Cup in the U.S. Is the commitment still there? It is, but the commitments for everything have to be carefully uh, reviewed because finances are tighter. It's the way it is. It's the way of the world, and so everything's taken a hit. Not just soccer. Um, you know, my position remains open. I do think they will fill it with a World Cup coming up soon. I imagine between the national teams and the local pro teams, there's a lot to cover, and there's some good writers at the Post who have strong interests in soccer, and I hope the slot is filled with one of them. I think the commitment's still there. There's an understanding of the sport's place, not only in the world, but its growing presence in America. So I'm pretty optimistic on that front, but also the reality is, there's fewer people the Post is sending to many events and covering a lot of teams, and other media organizations are in the same boat.
Yeah, for companies like the Washington Post and the New York Times and maybe the Athletic, and now you work for Yahoo, and I'm going to ask you about that in just a minute. But I mean, there just aren't as many people, or there aren't as many outlets who are willing to invest in it. And maybe it's ironic at a time when there's never been greater interest in American soccer, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, interest certainly is growing. The world has become a smaller place, and there are fans of not just the national team, but the Premier League and the Bundesliga and Serie A, certainly Champions League. And the reason for that is accessibility. You can watch games on TV, streaming, whatever. The availability of global soccer is 1,000 times improved over even 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So that's a big part of it. Yeah, I mean, media companies have to make difficult decisions, and certainly once you get past in sports, once you get past the NFL and big events like the Olympics and the World Cup, not everything's going to make the cut, and it depends on interest within that market and the passion and readership or clicks that stories and teams produce. So yeah, it's a difficult and frustrating time.
Yeah. I'm sure you had some choices, Stephen. Why Yahoo Sports? Why did you decide that would be the place to land?
Yeah, it's a good question. It made a lot of sense. Yahoo's superb writer, Henry Bushnell, had just left to go to The Athletic. There was an opening there. So that was probably the biggest thing. I reached out to them. They reached out to me. There's a World Cup coming up. The timing was right. They needed someone to step in right away, someone who had some experience and knowledge with the national team and with FIFA and the World Cup. So yeah, it was right. It's for me, it's not a full-time permanent position. It's a contract through next summer to cover the national team in the World Cup, and it's about right for me. I was, honestly, I was getting worn down by the day-to-day grind of journalism and of media 24/7. So, this is still a very serious endeavor, but there's a specific goal in sight, and that's the World Cup and the U.S. national teams build up and performance at the World Cup.
At this point, do you feel the sort of momentum of American sports fans yet about the World Cup, or is that something we might feel in the months and or weeks leading up to the World Cup and not the 10 months before? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you see a little bit of it right now, but I think this is something that will really take off next spring and early in the summer. You see pockets of it when the national team plays, interest spikes a bit. The World Cup draw is going to be a big event in early December at the Kennedy Center when we find out who everyone plays and which cities get which games. The ticket selling process right now, I think, has generated some interest and some frustration and anger, given the prices and all. So yeah, but you know what? There's a lot going on sports wise in this country. Until the Super Bowl passes, NFL is first on most people's mind. And then, you obviously got the NCAA tournament and playoffs and baseball starting again. So there's a lot happening. And so, yeah, it's a huge event, and it's going to be a great success in terms of fans and viewership and everything else. But it'll be a while. Plus, look at our culture now, our society, everyone has a very short attention span. So you want to know what's going on right now. Looking ahead to next summer, I mean, that could be a million years away to most people. So I I wouldn't be too worried if there's not a huge groundswell in the spring
Mm-hmm.
for World Cup and what World Cup's going to bring. But once it's here, it's going to be a big deal and a fun time for not just soccer fans, but I think for the public at large.
Yeah, if there's one thing we do in America, well, we do a lot of things well, but put on big events is one of the things we do really well.
Yeah,
Olympics, World Cup, Super Bowls, whatever it is. But I do feel a bit of remorse, and it may be me included, in the inability or ability to get tickets, and then the price, because the price is going to really ace out a lot of people. Most people will be aced out of it, not just by the process, but by the price, don't you think?
yeah, absolutely. It's a big commitment, financial
Yeah.
commitment to go to a World Cup game. I mean, if you're going by yourself and someone's giving you a ride and everything, okay, that's you could afford it. But when you're talking about families and transportation and hotels and food and everything else, I mean, this is an enormous cost. We'll see what some of these prices I think will certainly come down once
Mhm.
we see matches and what cities they're in and what times they start. I mean, this is an expanded World Cup. You're going to get some games that are not of great appeal out there. Just nothing against these teams or the city, but if Uzbekistan is playing Paraguay on a Wednesday afternoon in the summer in Kansas City, I don't know if ticket prices are going to soar for that.
I think I'll be there for that one then.
Yeah, so we'll see. After the draw, we'll know a lot more. And but yeah, for the big ticket events such as an opening game or a final or any late round games, plus the U.S. matches, it's a pretty penny, right?
Yeah, yeah. You cover the U.S. men's team on a regular basis. Now, maybe they're not quite in that sort of super cycle to the World
Right.
Cup, but how do you see Pochettino and how do you see this progress? And here, as we talk in the early part of November, how do you see the American progress for a team? Let's be honest, has got a lot of pressure on it to maybe do more than just get to the round of 16. Maybe go beyond that. What do you think?
Yeah, this is the moment for a U.S. national team playing at home. Expectations are high. You have more players than ever playing overseas in Big Five leagues. So yeah, expectations have grown. In an expanded World Cup, they certainly should get through a group, and they should get through the round of 32. And then after that, we'll see. A lot hinges on what your matchups are, who you're paired with. But yeah, I mean, I think if they could get to a quarterfinals, I think that'd be very satisfying, and I think it would help the program and the sport immensely. But round of 16, it's been a while since they've gotten past that point. 2002 when they got to the quarterfinals. So we're kind of waiting for that moment. We're waiting for that breakthrough moment. It did not come in 2010 in South Africa. It did not come in 2014 in Brazil. Obviously, the program was set back by the failure to qualify for 2018. They did okay in Qatar, getting to a round of 16. But now, yeah, this is that moment. They need to take that next step. Pochettino's things are starting to come together. He's really set the culture. The players have a greater understanding. He seems to have found a core group of players. They're getting some results, which is important. All these things are falling into place. When you step back, you have to ask yourself, okay, things are better. He has the players' attention. They got a system in place. But are they good enough? Are they good enough? Are the players good enough to make a run at a World Cup and get beyond the round 16? We'll see. That's the big question, and that's where the pressure is on Pochettino to guide this team to that next step.
We'll have more with Stephen coming up in just a minute. Did you know when you join Soccer America, you get the daily Soccer on TV schedule delivered to your inbox every morning? It's something I've relied on for years to keep track of matches around the world. Also, you get expert analysis, insider interviews, in-depth coverage of the biggest games. Try it for free for 30 days at socceramerica.com/free trial. That's socceramerica.com/free trial. And while you're here, check the links in the description to sign up for notifications when our new episodes drop. What does the world, do you think of American soccer at this point? And I'll just drop in a few names that got the attention of folks. Messi, of course, a few years ago, but Son comes on here and does wow, and Mueller is here now, and what do you think the rest of the world thinks of American soccer as we get ready for this greatest event, maybe the greatest sporting event ever?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's greater respect for the U.S. national team programs. Certainly for the women because of their
Right.
excellence on the global stage. Men, there's a greater appreciation for the U.S. player. We see that with the signing of talent overseas with some big clubs. MLS, it's a separate topic. I think people overseas see MLS as growing, but still finding its way. There is still fairly or unfairly a perception of being a retirement league because big names tend to come over here very late in their careers. And if it's not their last stop in their career, it's their next to last stop. No one's going to argue that, Messi shouldn't be here because he's going to retire as an MLS player. Anybody would take him as their, for him to be their last stop. There's still that ambition, or hopefully an ambition, to sign players more in their prime, players with big names. They've done a good job of cultivating young players, and I think you've seen more go overseas and sign because the U.S. market is ripe for signing young talent. We've seen it, players come through MLS academy systems and through the youth national teams and ending up in Europe. So I think the general image of American soccer has grown, and sky's the limit, but there's got to be money put behind those ambitions.
If there's anything we could say about the way American soccer is run at this point, is that there are probably more billionaires interested in investing in American soccer. That includes the men and the women's side than ever. What impact has that had on the quality and the perception of what we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see it in the stadiums that have been built, the training headquarters that clubs now operate in. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that MLS and certainly NWSL teams were, training in municipal facilities or, repurposed training centers. Now, I mean, you go to a place like Atlanta or New England or Austin, and they have these incredible places, and it takes money for that to happen. So someone like Arthur Blank has put enormous amounts of money not only into Atlanta United, but into U.S. soccer with the new training facility being built south of Atlanta. So, yeah, I mean, money makes things happen. There were a few, very wealthy people in the early years of MLS, like Phil Anschutz and the Crafts, the Hunts, who put the money forward. But now there's a lot, and it's great to see the commitment being made towards building the sport in ways that are important, that aren't necessarily visible, like the youth academies, and like these facilities and everything else that goes along with it. So certainly progress being made at there's a lot of Americans who have a great interest in soccer overseas too. With you see the ownership of with big clubs run by American groups. So yeah, from a business sense, soccer is good business for many people with money.
Yeah. Don't we know we were around in those days when it was Anschutz and the Crafts and the Hunts who literally, between the three of them, kept Major League Soccer alive. I mean, there was a time after what, 5 or 6 years when they were, Anschutz owned half the teams.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the Florida teams folded, boom.
Yeah.
And the league was, I don't know how close it was, but it was certainly
close.
was pretty close, right?
Yeah, it was in big trouble. And it was like early, like 2002, 2003, around there, 2004. And then I think at one point they were down to what, eight teams maybe. So yeah, they were hanging on. And if it wasn't for the commitment from particularly Anschutz, the Anschutz group, then this league might have disappeared and pro soccer would have, at least MLS would have disappeared.
Yeah, and it got so crazy. The team that I broadcast for, the San Jose Earthquakes, won a couple of championships, and then they were the Supporters Shield winners one year, and the next year they were in Houston and won a championship with many of the same players, and then won another championship with many of the same players. So that's how crazy it was. Anschutz said, "Yeah, okay, we're not going to do that in San Jose anymore, but we'll do it in Houston."
Yeah.
And the same guys Dominic coached, and the same guys won the championship for a couple more years. Yeah.
It's been a journey. I mean, MLS now has been around for 30 years, almost 30 years. And it's still a young league in terms of, just its history and, gaining greater footing on the sports landscape in this country. But certainly there's been growth. Obviously fans and certainly, and players and others want faster growth, and that's understandable. And it's getting there. We'll see what kind of impact this World Cup has on MLS and the sport in general. But certainly the profile of the sport is going to rise immensely, and that can be nothing but beneficial for pro soccer, college soccer, everything.
We talked a little bit earlier about the state of journalism, sort of, and I'd like to talk a little bit for a few minutes about the state of journalism in soccer and the state of broadcasting, the media presentation of soccer in America, if you don't mind. Just generally, what do you think about the state of soccer journalism and the way the game is covered and the information is produced and maybe even consumed, if you wouldn't mind answering those questions?
Yeah, I think it's become more sophisticated. I think as the audience has grown more sophisticated about the sport, so has coverage of it. And you look at television production of soccer now. NBC treats the Premier League like the NFL. I mean, it's gorgeous. And there's critical analysis, and obviously NBC's poured millions, billions, I don't know, dollars into this because they understand the audience is here, and they understand the game, they understand the clubs, and what's at stake. MLS as well with Apple. I mean, Apple's there's been a lot of challenges, obviously, going to this format, but I think Apple has done a tremendous job of presenting the games and producing, the wraparound shows and the pregame shows and everything else. So I think as the sport has grown, the media around it has grown as well. There's competition now for people interested in soccer. It's kind of like, I always look at it as like, if you're a basketball fan in this country, you're going to watch the NBA or college basketball. maybe a little bit of high school or some overseas stuff, but those are your core things. If you like soccer in this country, you might watch MLS and nothing else. You might watch the national teams and not care about pro soccer. You might be Premier League only and Champions League. You might just want World Cup. You might be only interested in the women's soccer. And going back to basketball, I should include WNBA as well. So, the competition in media and in TV for soccer fans, I think it has grown immensely too, because it's such a fractured audience out there. And, you can get people to watch Premier League, but, can ESPN then get them to watch La Liga as well, and so on. So, I think the quality of soccer media has had to go up because the audience demands it, and there's real competition out there for viewers.
Can you imagine? It just sort of dawned on me a minute ago. Can you imagine if when we started working in MLS and you started covering soccer full time, that there would be a company called Netflix that would get a couple of World Cups coming up, that Apple would be in the soccer business, that Prime is in the soccer business, the women's league, that Fox, Comcast, Disney, CBS, I mean, any company of any note in American media is in the soccer business, either streaming it or putting it over the air or both. And that, I think, is probably as good an example of what in the world's going on here than anything, huh? And 30 years ago, that would have been ludicrous to think that.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to show our true ages by saying, back in the day, there was soccer made in Germany, and there was, Premier League matches on 2-day delay. And God, the Spanish networks obviously would provide coverage of Mexican league, but it's amazing. I mean, part of it's the advancements in technology,
yes,
but also it's advancements in interest in the game in this country, and the platforms to make it available.
Yeah. Even 15 years ago, and I don't care throwing, I'm not going to use any names here, but I would, if I had to, throw somebody under the bus. And it wasn't that long ago when I was doing local sports earthquakes in San Jose, when the producers of the broadcasts would not put a camera on the 18-yard line in case there was an offside call. I said, well, we might only need it 2 or 3 times during the game. But I would say, but those 2 or 3 times during the game are essential to understanding what happens in the game. And it was expensive to put one camera on the 18-yard line at the top of the penalty area. Of course, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody does. And now here we are, where the delivery of it is all in 4K, and it's 18 cameras at a big Apple broadcast and those kinds of things. It's awesome, but it hasn't been that long ago.
Exactly. And we'll see more of this advancements next summer during World Cup, when Fox obviously is going to have about 2/3 of the games on Big Fox. The rest on FS1. NBC Universal has the Spanish language rights. So Universo and Peacock Spanish will have matches. I think you'll see these companies take even a greater step in presenting the game and providing all the bells and whistles that you see normally at an Olympics, around a Super Bowl, the NCAA tournament, whatever it is. It's going to be a major TV production, not over a week or two, but we're talking 4+ weeks of matches, plus the build up to it and afterwards. So you're looking at like a 6-week window of high end, or we hope high end, soccer production on U.S. Television sets.
We know Netflix has the next 2 women's cycles, 27 and 31, and it looks like the USA and Mexico and Jamaica and Costa Rica. Is that the lot who will sometime in the spring get official word from FIFA that they're the host. They're the only bid in, apparently, at this point. So they'll host then. Do you have any insight on who might be getting the TV broadcast for the men in the next 2 cycles? Because those have been held very close to the vest. And I don't even think
Yeah.
the Fox people have any idea. And certainly Disney's probably in the hunt as well, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's gonna be fascinating because of, like you said, all these new media outlets that are competing for sports TV rights.
Yeah.
We see it
It's a lot
across
of
the
money.
board. Yeah, not just in soccer, but I mean, you got NFL games now on Amazon Prime, and so it's a different world. As you would know best, John.
Well,
I haven't heard, but it's going to be a fascinating process, and how the competition goes to winning those rights.
just so you know, I've asked, and if they know, they're really good at keeping it to themselves, but I don't think they know. I really don't. I don't
Yeah.
think it's been decided yet. One final thought, and that is about the journalism of soccer. We talk mostly about broadcasting. You
Yeah.
sort of mentioned it's more sophisticated in the audience. It's a better understanding, but it really is different, and the delivery of information is so different, and the consumption of it is so different. But does the journalism, no matter how it's delivered, still journalism? And if it
Yeah.
isn't, how's it changed? Or do you still have faith that there's journalism being done here?
Yes, there's still a lot of great journalism being done by many outlets. The world has changed around us. The demands are different. You don't necessarily have the time and the resources to do deep dives into important topics. I think there are still outlets that can do that. But we've kind of gotten into the culture of hot takes and opinions, and just let everything fly without great research and detail. So yeah, I mean, I think you'll see a lot of good, strong journalism done over the next several months related to the World Cup, related to FIFA, whether it's ticket prices, whether it's I don't know, stadium contracts, how Trump will use this World Cup for his purposes, or how politics will play into it. If members of the Iranian delegation are forbidden from entering the U.S. for the World Cup, that's going to create a stir, and that's going to require some real reporting. So yeah, no, I think it's still out there. There's a lot of noise as well out there, but we try to rise above it and hopefully get to the truth as best we possibly can on any important topic.
In the end, I guess all we can hope for is that there are enough people who still are, one, interested in getting the real story, and two, in some respect, willing to pay for it. And I guess those are still the two things that we need, right?
That's a big part of it. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of great work out there, but it costs money to do great work, and a lot of the money that helps pay salaries and make it all happen requires paying subscribers.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it, and people need to think about that a little bit when they make decisions about where to spend their money in media.
Well, when I talk to our students about it, and our journalism students about it, and they don't want to pay for it either. But if you're going to go down to Joe's Pub and get a cold drink, you've got to pay for it. If you want to get a bag of Skittles over at 7-Eleven, you've got to pay for it. Information is a commodity that you need and you should yearn for, and you need to be willing to pay for it. So
exactly. Yeah. Great point.
I don't know how much they listen to that, but I know they like Skittles and a cold drink. That's for sure.
There you go.
All right, Stephen, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed it.
My pleasure, John. Anytime.
Stephen Goff is, I believe the title is Senior Soccer Reporter for Yahoo Sports, and for a long time, about 4 decades, covered soccer and other sports, but mostly soccer over the last 30 plus years for the Washington Post in our nation's capital. He's been with us this time around on the Soccer Media Podcast.
Today's Soccer America trivia question was, which team was the last first-time winner of the Men's World Cup? The most previous winners, Argentina, France, and Germany, were all repeat champions. That takes us to 2010 at the World Cup in South Africa, where Spain beat the Netherlands 1-0 in the final to win its first World Cup.
And before we wrap it up here, if you're looking to stay on top of the game, check out Soccer America. Members get the daily Soccer on TV schedule. They also get a daily digest of the top soccer stories in their inbox every morning, plus coverage of the biggest matches. You can try it free for 30 days. Go to www.socceramerica.com/free trial. That's socceramerica.com/free trial. And while you're here, click like and subscribe and check the links in the description to get notified when the next episodes drop. And that's it for this episode of the Soccer Media Podcast. For Mike Woitala, I'm John Shrader. We'll see you next time.